Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty end flat after some wild swings on Dalal Street. Mid-caps outperform with the index hitting a record high. The market cap of companies listed on the BSE surpasses $5 trillion. Gold prices hit a record high and silver prices hit the highest level in 11 years, fueled by safe haven buying. Copper prices also hit a record high after concerns about a potential shortage. Banks are set to seek changes to the RBI's draft project financing rules. Banks believe the 5% provisioning for infra projects is too high and inhibiting. Sources say Indian Banking Association will submit the industry view before the 15 June deadline. Outrageous, says US President Joe Biden as he attacks the decision by the International Criminal Court's top prosecutor to seek arrest warrants against Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu and Hamas leaders for war crimes, but France says it supports the independence of the ICC. Thousands of people in Iran attend the funeral procession of President Ibrahim Raisi in the country's northwest region where his helicopter crashed. Authorities cracked down on those insulting the late president after many dissenting voices point to his alleged involvement in executing political prisoners and suppressing anti-government protests. Congress leader Jairam Ramesh promises policy stability, simpler tax structure and jobs-linked incentives for manufacturing. Along with the PLI, if the opposition alliance is voted to power, also promises to continue with disinvestment and increase competition by privatizing state-run companies. The Pune police arrest the father of the accused 17-year-old who killed two people while driving his luxury car at high speed and under the influence of alcohol. The police charges the father, a prominent builder, with willful neglect of the child. The minor boy was given bail within 15 hours of arrest. The pub which served alcohol to the minor also faces a police case. As the mercury touches 47 degrees in parts of Delhi, authorities ask schools to close early for vacation. The weather department has issued a red alert till the end of this week due to severe heatwave conditions. Actor Scarlett Johansson expresses shock and anger after OpenAI uses a voice which she claims is eerily similar to hers. Johansson had turned down an offer from the company to lend her voice to a new conversational chat GPT model. Well, let's start with the market action. A roller coaster ride on Dalal Street today as the Sensex and the Nifty declined at the open, recovered midday and finally saw another bout of pressure in late trade. The Sensex and the Nifty ending flat. The Sensex down by about 52 points. Nifty up in positive territory, but just about absolutely flat. The Nifty Bank down by 150 points. The mid-cap index was higher by about 2%. So that was where the markets closed for the day. Prashant is standing by now to wrap up the market action. Very volatile, Prashant.
A decent day, but no real big follow-through. But the fact is that the market recovered from the day's low. Unexpectedly, in the morning, you had a meaningful, decent kind of a dip. And by close, the dip was erased. On the upside, on a day-on-day basis, the Nifty did not add very much. But as I said, a quieter session, really. Banks have been lagging. The Nifty, of course, has taken out all the retracements of the fall. I mean, the line of sight to a new high perhaps is clear. We don't know when it will come, whether the market will wait all the way till the elections, but at least it's there. For the Nifty Bank, it still needs to do that. And I think the intraday on your screen talks about that. Mid-cap and small-cap indices, much better. But of course, I mean, on Saturday, the mid and small-cap part of the market, and even before that, the last few sessions, they've looked very, very good. Now, in the large-cap space, a lot of metal names, Hindalco, Coal India, Tata Steel, JSW Steel. So all commodities and industrial metals which led from the front. On the downside, you had Nestle, Maruti and Hero MotoCorp, which were the pressure areas. Market breadth was negative today, more down than up. So I'll start with what was lower. Aptus was down sharply. Delivery on the back of results. Astral same. MCX was lower. PB Fintech. You had CUB, which was down about 5.5%. Parag Mill, KEC, Motilal Oswal Financial Services. You had something like a Share India, Novama, Netweb, and Timken India, which were down 5.5%. So fairly long list of volume-led losers that we had. But on the upside as well, the list was pretty solid. So a lot of PSU names once again: RVNL, BEL, Cochin Shipyard, NHPC, IRCON, Hudco, SJVN, Railtel, LIC, just to name a few. But you also had the metal names which shone through. You had Vedanta and Hindustan Zinc, which were big standout gainers once again. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks. And fund manager Samir Arora says the markets will be okay as long as there is political continuity. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Arora also cautioned that any adverse change in capital gains tax structure would neutralize the feel-good factor of the Modi government's third term. Take a look.
Because beyond maybe a few days here or there, as long as the BJP government is back, the market will be okay. It might be a little less okay, a little more okay. That depends on the exact numbers. So the point is, after looking at even at the visit itself, I had figured this out, and then I think this interview was quite convincing that I don't need to look at whether you're getting 310 or 320. I will be reasonably similarly bullish if you are at 272 plus. That's the thing. We would be very worried about capital gain taxes and stuff like that. And I can say it that you may get as many seats, but if that is done, it will neutralize a very large part of the good feel factor, and it will be negative for the public because the new investors coming in have seen wealth creation for the first time, and it will be very negative. It won't be just negative, it will be highly negative. Because when we say that the Indian market has outperformed other markets over the last 5 years, 10 years, that would not be the case if we put taxes in it. Domestic investors who have recently come in and are creating wealth and are excited about this thing and are therefore supporters of liberalization and opening up because they see its impact on the market. So from both angles, let's hope they don't do that. Other than that, we are bullish.
Well, that's Samir Arora on the markets. Precious metals have been rallying in the last few days, with many traders attributing the demand to safe haven buying. Gold and copper prices at record high, silver at an 11-year high. Manisha is standing by with more on what's moving the commodity market. Manisha, what's going on?
Well, it's a roaring rally in precious metals and base metals as well. But within that also, you have a couple of them making all-time highs. I'll start with the gold prices, and we've seen $2,450 an ounce of an all-time high in the international markets. And the Indian markets have seen an all-time high of around 74,400 rupees per 10 grams. It has been a big run-up that we've seen in case of gold, but silver clearly outperforming that. With the international markets, while trading at a December 2012 highs, it is the Indian markets which have hit an all-time high at 95,000 rupees per kilo. Not too far away from that 1 lakh mark here. And let me remind you that silver's low in this year has been at around 67,000. So from 67,000 to 95,000 in matter of 2 or 3 months is something that's a very strong run-up that we've seen into this one. Well, there are various reasons for this one. The US data has been slightly easy than street anticipation, and that has led to a higher probability of a September rate cut. Also, there are various uncertainties now happening in Middle East, right from Israel to Iran helicopter crash, and then the king, Saudi Arabia's king, health is not so well as well. So a lot of uncertainties also have led to some safe haven buying in case of gold and silver there. Especially in case of silver, it also has to do with the record industrial demand anticipated for a 4th straight year. Markets also are looking at a big deficit building up in case of silver for this year as well, and that has been supportive. Not just precious metals, copper is hit an all-time highs on LME in US, in Shanghai, and in the Indian markets as well. This is because the markets are looking at a potential demand growth going forward, and supply is not being able to catch up to it. Apart from that, China also has said that they will buy all unsold housing inventory, and this is done to ensure that there are no more defaults coming in here, and also to support the markets. China also has in the previous week launched a bond issuance to the tune of 1 trillion yuan. So all of these factors have supported markets.
Manisha, many thanks. Commodity markets rallying and touching new records. Banks are likely to seek lower provisions and suggest alternate proposals to counter the Reserve Bank's draft infra and real estate project financing rules. That's ahead of the June 15 deadline. Banking sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the 5% provision proposed is too high and inhibiting. Ritu joins us now with more. Ritu, what are the main concerns that bankers have, and is there a counter proposal?
Well, a lot has been said and made of the proposed project financing rules which RBI issued for feedback earlier this month, some worrying about the hit on balance sheets, others terming it a deal breaker for project financing because of the steeply higher provisions. So we've been speaking to a whole host of large banks, including public sector banks that have a more substantial exposure to these infrastructure projects, to understand the kind of feedback that they're going to provide to the RBI before that 15th of June deadline. And clearly, there is widespread discomfort among large banks on that 5% general provision which is proposed at the construction phase of the project itself. The large banks we spoke to believe even if provisions are to be raised from the current 0.4% levels, perhaps a smaller hike of 1 or 2% could be considered. Other banks believe that maybe instead raising risk weights for project financing during the construction stage could serve the better purpose if the concern is to price the risk better. The second major change which banks are likely to propose is that RBI allow for a minimum 1 year of moratorium period after the DCCO or the commencement date of a project in the case of non-infrastructure projects, and 2 years moratorium for infrastructure projects instead of the 6-month cap which has been proposed. Besides these, banks are also going to seek clarity on whether RBI is going to propose a floor for the exposure above which these rules would apply, say a minimum of 1,500 crores or so. Now, besides this, we understand NBFCs are also in the process of firming and submitting their views to the RBI separately.
All right, Ritu, many thanks. Staying with banking, Bandhan Bank's founder and CEO C.S. Ghosh has said he will take up, and I quote, a bigger strategic role at the holding company when his tenure ends in July this year. Speaking to us after the bank's earnings, Ghosh said that the search committee will find a suitable successor and no related parties will be part of the succession plan. Take a look.
I have been taken a very consciously decided to retirement of the 9th of July 2024, which is my third term as a MD and CEO. I have the plan on that. The bank is under the holding company. I like to go to this role of holding company as a strategic role and the bigger way to other vertical also. Not any money is related to any of the related parties. Family or the promoter. Of course, there is a big promoter group, and of course, this is an other vertical. You already know that it has been developed, but other than this, is not in anything have been done any of the way on that very transparent way, very strong governance practice, and we are running this organization.
Well, moving to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive, India's food safety regulator, that's the FSSAI, has received lab reports pertaining to MDH and Everest spices. Now, the regulator has decided to test the samples after Singapore and Hong Kong had imposed restrictions on the products sold by these companies, citing traces of ethylene oxide, which is believed to be a carcinogen. Sources say 28 out of the 34 lab reports received by the FSSAI show no traces of ethylene oxide. Timsy standing by with more. Timsy, take us through where things currently stand with the FSSAI's probe into spices put into the market by MDH and Everest.
Well, sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the food safety regulator, FSSAI, has now received some of the lab reports of tests on MDH and Everest spices. Sources say that out of 34 lab reports, 28 reports show no traces of ethylene oxide, that is ETO. However, results are still awaited of remaining 6 lab reports. Sources say that lab reports have been examined by a scientific panel at FSSAI, and the panel has observed that the samples showed no traces of ethylene oxide. FSSAI, remember, had picked up 9 samples of Everest spices from their 2 manufacturing facilities, one at Maharashtra and one at Gujarat, for testing. And similarly, FSSAI had picked up 25 samples from MDH from their 11 manufacturing facilities, which included 1 in Delhi, 7 from Haryana and 3 from Rajasthan, for testing. Apart from Everest and MDH, test reports of over 300 of spices of other brands, of which samples were picked up across the country, were also examined by FSSAI scientific panel, and the panel conclusively indicated that there was no presence of ethylene oxide. Sources further say that these are just the beginning, and since 6 reports are pending, that will also be updated soon. But just to remind our viewers, FSSAI had initiated a pan-India level drive through all commissioners of food safety of states and UTs and regional directors on 22nd April, taking cognizance of reports on recall of Indian spices by several countries. It is understood that spices sold in domestic market are not sanitized and spices for exports are sanitized with ethylene oxide. The drive included extensive inspection of the spice manufacturing units and also sampling and testing of products manufactured for selling, distributed for consumption in the domestic market only. Let's see what is the final outcome of the remaining reports. We'll keep you posted on it.
All right, Imzi, appreciate you joining us. We will head into a break, but up next, Congress leader Jairam Ramesh speaking exclusively on the opposition's economic agenda if voted to power. That and more when we return. Iranians gathered in Tabriz to mourn late President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash on Sunday. The country's foreign minister and 6 other people on the helicopter, including crew members, were also killed. Iran's government has declared 5 days of mourning, culminating in a funeral ceremony later this week. Iranian authorities have ordered a crackdown on online users who published insults against the late president. Several posts appeared on social media highlighting Raisi's alleged involvement in the execution of thousands of political prisoners and suppressing anti-government protests. US President Joe Biden slammed the top prosecutor at the International Criminal Court for seeking the arrest warrants against Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister. Biden termed the decision outrageous and hit out at equating the Israeli leadership with Hamas. The prosecutor is also seeking the arrest for Hamas leaders, citing war crimes. Netanyahu also spoke out against the ICC prosecutor's decision.
This decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the International Court. Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler. What a travesty of justice. What a disgrace.
We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection. But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide.
That is President Biden. Back home, Congress leader Jairam Ramesh has promised policy stability, simpler tax structures and jobs-linked incentives for manufacturing, along with PLI schemes continuing if the opposition alliance is voted to power. In a conversation with my colleague Parikshit Luthra, Ramesh also promised to continue with disinvestment and increase competition by privatizing state-run companies. Take a look.
The corporate tax rates were reduced, but private investment has not boomed. There's no buoyancy in private investment. It's still stagnating at about 27 or 28% of GDP. And why are businessmen now going and seeking citizenship of Dubai and Singapore and other countries of the world? They should be investing in this country, no? We have to have a predictable tax regime. One of the reasons why, Keynes once said that investment is not just a financial decision. Investment is a psychological decision. And today the psychology in India is one of fear, is one of distrust, is one of suspicion. His extraordinary statement that the Prime Minister made a few days ago that, Adani and Ambani are going in a tempo with gunny bags of black money and giving it to the Congress party. I thought black money had been unearthed and eradicated after the demonetization exercise of November 8, 2016. And Prime Minister is speaking of black money in the hands of two of the biggest industrialists of India. Extraordinary situation. We are for competition. We need more competition. We need more genuine competition. We can't have oligopolies and monopolies in our industrial system. Competition, and more competition. We must reduce barriers to entry. We must reduce barriers to exit while protecting the legitimate interests of all stakeholders, particularly labor. We can't have an insolvency and bankruptcy code, which has haircuts to the extent of 80%, 90%, as we have seen in a large number of cases. We are for competition. There will be a public sector. in strategic sectors of the economy, in certain strategic sectors of the economy, public sector will be there. But we know that we cannot accelerate GDP growth. We cannot transit to an 8%, 9% rate of economic growth without strong, buoyant, expanding private investment. We're talking of compressing the number of rates. We are recognizing that we have to recognize you can't have a single rate like we have in other countries, in many other countries of the world. You will have one or two exceptions, one or two stated exceptions from the beginning, but by and large we have to reduce the number of rates, maybe one or max. You've got to have one rate, and then you must have one rate for what are considered to be goods that are consumed by the better off sections of society, and one rate which is lower than the revenue neutral rate for mass consumption goods. So we're talking of considerable simplification.
I think you can catch that entire interview with Jairam Ramesh at 5 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Pune police has arrested the father of the accused 17-year-old boy who killed two people while driving his luxury car at high speed and under the influence of alcohol. The police has now charged the father, a prominent builder, with willful neglect of a child. The minor boy was given bail in 15 hours of arrest. Yeshakota gets us the latest from Pune.
While the father of the accused in the case of Pune Porsche accident has been arrested, so are the managers and the owner of both the pubs and the bars where the victim as well as the accused were partying at Koregaon Park, very close to the location where we're standing. We're currently at Yerwara police station in Pune. In fact, this is the place where the FIR has been registered in the drunken driving case, wherein the accused is a teenager, 17 years, 8 months old. He is also the son of a renowned businessman, a renowned builder from Pune. In fact, this very builder has now been arrested by the police, the Pune police, under the section 75 and 77 of the Juvenile Justice Act.
An absolutely tragic and horrific incident. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC-TV18. Stay tuned. We're back in a minute.